We're lucky enough to have Sharam on the phone here. He's coming across to play at Summer Days early next year, 8th of January at the Telstra Event Centre. He's going to be frontlining that gig. Sharam, how's it going?
Good, man. How you doing?
Not bad, not bad. Whereabouts are you at the moment?
Actually, Washington, D.C.
Washington, D.C.
Sweet as. We'll get straight into some questions. So it's been a few years since you were down here. I remember you played at, was it Stars or Astor back then? So you're looking forward to coming back to New Zealand?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, last time I was there, I think, I don't exactly remember, it was like, more than 2 years ago, I think. I had a fantastic time. It was a like midweek show, but the enthusiasm and the crowd's reaction was phenomenal. So I always made it a point to come back, and I'm glad finally the date has come.
Yeah, well, it's middle of summer, so you've picked a good time to come as well.
Should be a pretty good crowd at Telstra. Your new album, Sharam, Get Wild, has just dropped, and it features some interesting collaborations with the likes of P. Diddy, Daniel Bedingfield, and Tommy Lee. What's it like working with pop and rock sort of hip hop artists compared to the electronic artists you work with?
They come from a different world, obviously, and as an artist, it's always interesting to see how other people work and how what the process is, in a different environment. Obviously, with rock, the process is bands get together, they jam, and they write around their session, and that's how they come to create songs. With hip hop, there's a backing track, and they just write lyrics on it and try different things. So it's a whole different process than electronic music, where we start off usually with a track, and usually end up with a track, what I wanted to do is sort of collide the worlds, their world and the world that I come in, and create something seamless that doesn't sound odd, that doesn't sound weird, but yet it's innovative and it pushes the boundaries. Because I'm a type of person that constantly gets bored with doing the same thing over and over. Electronic music, there's so many possibilities, and unfortunately, in our world, not all of them are explored, or if they are explored, they're not really welcomed.
Yeah.
Sure. I've always been the type to go against the grain and try to push things as much as I can. And for me, it was a very rewarding experience.
So, sound-wise, on the album, what can we expect to hear from you?
It's funny. I was watching this documentary called Jazz. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but they do an interview with Louis Armstrong, the jazz hero. Yep. And they ask him, because when jazz was coming up, there was a lot of people tagging at different things, what different styles are, and this is my favorite, become my favorite quote right now, and it goes, it doesn't matter what it sounds. In music, there's two things: there's good music and there's bad music. Yeah. Everything else is just BS. So you either are listening to something that you tap in your foot to, and you're enjoying it, and that becomes good music, or you don't. And that's pretty much my philosophy. I don't really have a style. I just do what I feel. Okay. And the vibe I get from the crowd, I'm able to transform myself into whatever I need to be, without really losing myself. And that's the thing. I listen to all kinds of music. In my library of music, I have all kinds of different demographics of music, because I just and I don't categorize them. It's just, for me, it's just good music or bad music. So
cool.
I really can't tell you what style I have, because I really don't think I do have a style.
That's cool. Was there any particular inspiration for the album Get Wild?
Well, obviously Spaghetti Western was the thematic inspiration on the album, and by the time I came up with that idea, I had already made about half of the songs on the album. So the sound of the album is not necessarily like a Wild West sound. There is such a thing. But thematically, that was the inspiration, and I wanted to try to do something different, something sort of outside of the box.
Nice. So the hit single, one of your hit singles on the album, She Came Along, featuring Kid Cutie, is based in a western, sort of old western movie sort of way, as well as that album cover. Are you into that sort of stuff? Those sort of movies, mate?
Yeah, I grew up on that stuff. I grew up on spaghetti westerns, on Sergio Leone stuff, and his style has been copied, in the movie world so many times, but so many different, high-profile directors, from Quentin Tarantino to Martin Scorsese, Steven Spielberg, so on and so forth. And he was a revolutionary the way he sort of brought like a whole different way of doing movies. And I've always been inspired by that. I mean, as a kid, I grew up on it, but later on, I learned more about, how they went about making those movies. And what attracted me about them was the tension that they created, and the drama that they created, using the visuals and music. And I try to sort of do the same thing with what I did with the album. I try to create, every track to have some sort of a story, like a overboard story, something that's larger than life, that sort of stands on its own, but can also coexist with other songs. And once I went into that, I figured I might as well go all the way. So I did the whole, acting like, dressing up like cowboy and doing a movie, doing like visuals, video, everything all around that theme.
Well, okay, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, like, as I was expecting, a lot of people, like, raise their eyebrows, they're like, well, what's going on here? What are we looking at here? Because, again, it's something that's so not normal, and people, and that's the thing, like, a lot of people don't like to take chances, or don't take chances that they don't think is going to pay off. And for me, I'm like, once I set my mind into like doing something, I just do it, and I don't really listen to what people say, as far as, this may not, it might go over people's heads, which a lot of times it did, because, if you're not familiar with spaghetti western, it probably goes over your head, like, what I did with that. But ultimately, I'm hoping the music is the one that speaks to the audience, and not necessarily the cover or the video and any of that stuff.
Yeah. As one half of Grammy Award-winning duo Deep Dish, the internet's often rife with forums about you guys getting back together. What's the official word on that?
Well, official word is that we're embarking on solo careers right now, and we're I'm smack in the middle of this album, and working on material for the next album, and Ali's also doing his thing with the path that he shows, and doing getting involved with more of like a techno minimal scene. And this is something we always wanted to do. So to a lot of people it was a surprise. To us it wasn't, because from day one we knew that we were individual producers and individual DJs, and just because we were working under one umbrella didn't mean that we should always do that. So artistically and stylistically we had to sort of step outside of it and sort of like carve our own path. But once we do that, we're gonna sit down again and figure out what the exciting thing is for us to do. Because at the end, it has to be something that excites us and something that makes sense for us. Then we feel like we can contribute and make something great out of it.
So carrying on from something that excites you and whatnot, after 20 years in the dance scene and sort of making and playing electronic music, what sort of kept you going, kept you motivated in the scene?
Well, it's funny. I mean, it's like young producers. It's what keeps me excited and going. Like I hear the new music coming out all the time, and some of this stuff is just like mind blowing. And I'm like, oh my god, like, how do they do that? Or and that keeps me pushing forward. And at the same time, having just like any artist or like any business, you always grow with your business, or at least you'd like to. So after doing it for so long, as much as I want to be on the cutting edge and do the latest and the best innovative stuff possible, I also want to do things that are different from what I've done in the past. And for me, it's always like an upward trajectory. I always like to feel like I'm going forward and not repeating myself. And, to do that, you have to sort of broaden your audience, and you have to do records that appeal to more than 200 people that are just DJs. You have to do records that appeal to people that are just like to listen to the song and sing along to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
So for me, that keeps me exciting to try to stay to my roots, at the same time push the boundaries and try to create as wide of an audience as I can, for the music that I'm making.
Yeah.
Nice.
I understand there's a bit of a local connection with sound engineer Jim Duval. How did that connection come about?
Yeah, I mean, he's a local DC boy. He was engineering for for Saeed and Polash, a duo from DC, and we were all friends, and so we would hang out and go to their parties, they would come to our parties, visit each other in the studio. So we go back a long way.
So some of the serious stuff. If I was to steal your iPod, what would be the most played on it at the moment?
It's funny. It rotates. I mean, right now, what the thing I'm listening to the most is, I'm in the middle of recording my next album, so I'm getting a lot of inspiration from stuff from the '70s. So you see a lot of Philly soul. You hear a lot of Philly soul in there. A lot of the music from Motown. A lot of cool '70s stuff. That's what I'm listening to. A lot of really early disco records. Early jazz records. I mean, I mentioned his name earlier. Louis Armstrong is it's always on heavy rotation on my iPod, or anywhere, anytime I have a chance to listen to anything other than electronic music.
Nice. So, if you played all over the world, Sharam, whereabouts is one of the places you prefer to play? One of the best places you've played?
I always say, if I'm in a place, a dark room with an amazing sound system, a great promoter, and a great crowd, it doesn't really matter where I'm playing. Yeah. So, the dance music is the one true intercontinental, international thing that there is. Yeah. So, once you have those elements, it doesn't really matter where you're playing. What I prefer is, when I get up in the morning, I like to, have a place to have a good meal, or see a couple of places, if I get a chance. So that part of it, I prefer to be, summertime with you guys. While it's cold here, it's warm there, so I'd rather be there. Yeah. But again, for me, it has to do with individual clubs, and I've recently played in Albania, and I had one of the most amazing gigs there, and you just never know when your best gig is going to be, and it's usually the common denominator is that there's a great sound system, there's a great set of people, and a great promoter behind it that creates that vibe, that creates that party.
Awesome. Well, I think that's about all the time we've got. Thank you for giving us your time to answer a few questions, and we all very look forward to Summer Days in January.
Excellent, man. I'm looking forward to coming there.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Cheers, man.
All right.